Right. So today we're going to do a deep dive that is just for you,
Mhm.
and we're going to be tackling a single source today.
Okay.
This is a news article
Hmm.
about Shaquille O'Neal's encounter with a woman named Margaret, who was experiencing homelessness in Los Angeles.
Interesting.
And trust me, this is not just your average celebrity does good story.
Okay.
We are going deeper. We're asking the question, can a single act of kindness really have like a ripple effect?
Yeah, I think that's a question that a lot of people have, when they see these sorts of stories. And,
Yeah.
I think what makes this case so interesting is the setting itself, right?
Hmm.
Hollywood Boulevard with all its glitz and glamour and, the amount of money that's kind of floating around there.
Right.
It often turns a blind eye to the harsh realities faced by its less fortunate residents.
Exactly. And the article really paints this picture of Margaret being almost invisible
Yeah.
amidst the throngs of tourists and the flashing lights. They talk about her worn out shoes, a faded cardboard sign, and people actively avoiding eye contact.
Yeah.
It's a stark reminder of how easy it is for somebody to fall through the cracks.
It really is. And this invisibility, there's a term for this that researchers use, and they call it civil inattention.
Hmm.
It's this social norm where we intentionally ignore those we perceive as different or outside our social circle.
Right.
And so you think about it, you're more likely to offer help to someone who seems like one of us.
Yeah, like they belong in
Exactly.
our group somehow.
Right.
That's a really interesting point. So in a way, Shaq's act of noticing Margaret, of breaking that pattern of civil inattention is already significant.
It is. It's huge. Absolutely.
Yeah,
And then you add to that the fact that, Shaq wasn't there with a camera crew
right.
or, making a big show of his generosity.
Like, look at me.
The article mentions he was in like a hoodie and basketball shorts,
Oh,
just
wow.
blending in.
It kind of makes you wonder what was going through Margaret's mind when this giant of a man
Right.
approached her and wanted to buy her a meal. Like, did she even recognize him at first?
It's really hard to say, but the article describes her initial hesitation when they went to this BBQ joint.
Hmm.
She seemed almost uncomfortable with the idea of ordering something substantial,
Interesting.
almost as if she'd become accustomed to accepting the bare minimum,
Wow.
afraid to even dream of a full plate of ribs.
That's heartbreaking.
It is.
But it's also a reminder of how poverty can affect not just your material needs, but your sense of self-worth.
Precisely. It changes your whole outlook on what you deserve.
Hmm.
And this is where Shaq's insistence that she eat her fill takes on a deeper meaning,
Yeah.
He's not just providing sustenance, he's challenging her to reclaim her right to enjoy, to be treated with dignity.
Wow. Okay, so we have this powerful moment of human connection, this breaking down of barriers between two people from completely different worlds. Then what happens next?
Well, this shared meal becomes a catalyst for a deeper exchange.
Okay.
The article says that over plates of BBQ, Margaret opened up to Shaq about her life,
Wow.
about the loss of her husband, her struggle with illness, the eviction that led to her living on the streets.
That's incredibly vulnerable to share that much with a stranger, especially someone as famous as Shaq. It speaks volumes about the trust that he must have inspired in her.
Absolutely. It reminds me of something that Brene Brown says,
Oh, yeah.
a researcher who studies vulnerability.
Mhm.
She often says connection is the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. And I think in that BBQ joint, Margaret experienced all three.
It makes me think about the importance of just listening.
Mm.
We often rush to offer solutions, but sometimes just being a compassionate ear is the most powerful form of help.
Oh, I totally agree. And this is where I think Shaq's actions go beyond the typical charity narrative.
Right.
He's not just throwing money at a problem.
Yeah.
He's engaging with Margaret on a human level, taking the time to understand her story.
And then, you get this, he takes her to a spa.
I know.
Talk about a day of pampering for someone who has been sleeping on the streets.
What a treat.
I mean, the sensory details that the article mentions, the soft lighting, the essential oils, the feeling of being cared for.
Yeah.
It's like a total reset for Margaret.
It's a whole new world, and it's so much more than just a superficial makeover, too.
Right.
There's research that shows that access to hygiene and self-care can have a profound impact on the mental and emotional well-being of individuals experiencing homelessness.
Because it's about reclaiming that dignity.
Right, exactly. It's about being seen as worthy of care and attention. Remember the concept of civil inattention we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, spa treatment, new clothes, these things make Margaret visible again, But this time on her own terms, not as someone to be pitied or ignored.
Right, like she's choosing to be visible.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like she's being reintroduced to the world, but this time with a newfound sense of confidence. And I imagine that that confidence was tested when they encountered people who still judged her based on her past.
Oh, absolutely.
The article mentions a few instances where people made rude comments, but Shaq immediately shut them down.
Yeah, he was having none of it.
Yeah, it really shows that true kindness isn't passive. It's about actively advocating for those who are marginalized or mistreated.
Exactly. He's basically saying this woman deserves respect regardless of her circumstances.
Right, and it makes you wonder if those bystanders would have reacted differently if Shaq hadn't been there.
Oh, that's interesting.
Would they have been so quick to judge if it had been anyone else defending Margaret?
Right.
It's like his celebrity status amplified the message.
It put a spotlight on it, for sure.
Yeah, and it forced those people to confront their own biases.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that because it makes me think about, there's a phenomenon in social psychology called the bystander effect,
Oh, yeah.
where individuals are less likely to intervene in a situation when others are present.
Like we assume someone else is going to do something.
Yeah, it's almost like we diffuse responsibility.
But in this case, Shaq's presence disrupted that dynamic.
He did.
He became the catalyst for action, not just for himself, but for those around him.
Totally. And this kind of brings us to, I think, a really critical moment in the story.
Okay.
The point where Shaq gives Margaret the address of a support center and makes her a promise.
Yeah, and not just any promise, a promise to be there for her, to support her on this journey back to stability.
Yeah, it's a tangible lifeline, but it's also a powerful message. You're not alone.
And there's that element of paying it forward.
Yes.
Shaq asked Margaret to promise that when she was able, she would help someone else in need.
It's true. It's like he planted a seed,
Yeah.
knowing that kindness has this potential to multiply.
Exponentially.
And then you bring in social media to this whole narrative.
Oh, yeah.
The article talks about how the story went viral with people, praising Shaq's actions.
Oh, of course.
But also some questioning his motives.
Right.
And it really, I think, highlights this complex relationship we have with these online platforms.
Mhm.
They can amplify good deeds, but they can also fuel cynicism.
It's true, because on one hand, social media gave this story a global reach.
It did.
And it inspired countless people to rethink their own approach to homelessness and consider what acts of kindness they could offer.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it opened the door for skepticism.
Right, where people saying, oh, it was just a publicity stunt.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes me wonder if we've become so jaded, so accustomed to seeing performative acts of charity,
Right.
that we struggle to believe in genuine altruism.
Yeah. Have we lost our ability to trust that people can just be kind?
And that cynicism, I feel like it can be incredibly damaging.
It is.
Not just for the individuals involved, but for society as a whole.
It erodes our faith in each other.
So how do we combat this negativity? How do we foster a more compassionate online space
That's the million-dollar question.
where kindness is celebrated and not scrutinized?
Yeah, I don't think it's about silencing dissenting voices or pretending that skepticism doesn't exist.
Right.
It's about engaging in thoughtful dialogue, challenging those assumptions, and reminding ourselves that even in this digital age, human connection and empathy are essential.
It's about choosing to believe in the good, even when it's easier to be cynical.
It is.
And I think this is where the concept of media literacy comes in.
Absolutely.
We have to be critical consumers of information, questioning motives, but also recognizing the potential for positive impact.
Yes. And, regardless of Shaq's intentions, the story did have a real effect.
You're right. The article mentions an increase in donations and volunteers at homeless shelters. And people reported a shifted perspective on homelessness.
Yeah.
It's proof that even a story shared online can spark real-world change.
It's powerful.
And let's not forget about Margaret.
Oh, of course not. She's the heart of this story.
Yeah. Despite the challenges she faced, the article describes how she found stable housing, got a job, and ultimately fulfilled her promise to Shaq by helping another homeless person.
That's amazing. A true testament to the ripple effect.
It's incredible. She didn't just receive kindness. She embodied it, proving that one act can truly spark a chain reaction. But I'm curious, beyond the individual impact, what does Margaret's story tell us about the larger systems at play?
That's a good question.
We talked about civil inattention earlier, but what about the systemic factors that contribute to homelessness in the first place?
Right, and that's something we can't ignore.
Yeah.
While individual acts of kindness are essential,
Hmm.
they can't be a substitute for addressing those root causes of homelessness.
Like lack of affordable housing, inadequate mental health services.
Exactly, systemic discrimination.
So it's about finding that balance, celebrating the power of individual action,
Yes,
but also advocating for policy changes and structural reform
totally.
that address those systemic issues.
It's a multi-pronged approach, and I think Margaret's story offers a really valuable framework for that conversation.
Hmm.
It highlights the transformative potential of human connection, but it also reminds us that true change requires us to tackle both the individual and the systemic.
Wow. It feels like we've only just scratched the surface here.
It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, I mean, we've got this story about a chance encounter that leads to personal transformation, societal impact. It sparks a conversation about systemic issues. It's almost overwhelming to think about the ripple effect of it all.
It is, and yet it all comes back to that initial act of noticing, right?
Yeah.
Of seeing another human being and choosing to engage with compassion. It's a reminder that we all have that power to make a difference no matter our background or social standing.
You know, it's funny. We often associate Shaq with his larger-than-life persona.
Of course, right? The basketball star.
Yeah, the entertainer, the brand.
Uh-huh.
But in this story, it's his quiet acts of kindness that really stand out. It makes you realize that impact isn't always about volume. It's about authenticity and connection.
And I think it challenges us to look beyond our preconceived notions.
Right.
See the humanity in everyone, regardless of their circumstances. Think about it. How often do we make assumptions about people experiencing homelessness?
Hmm.
Do we see them as individuals with unique stories or just as like a faceless problem that needs to be solved?
I'll admit I'm guilty of that. Sometimes it's easy to get caught up in our own lives and just forget to look beyond the surface. But this story is a powerful reminder that everyone has a story
They do.
worth hearing.
And that kind of brings me to a thought-provoking question for you, dear listener.
Ooh, I like it.
If a celebrity as busy as Shaq
Right.
can take the time to connect with someone in need, what small act of kindness could you integrate into your day?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a grand gesture or anything.
It really doesn't.
I think that's the key takeaway here. It's
Yeah.
about those seemingly insignificant moments of connection. You know, holding a door open for someone, offering a genuine compliment, or just listening with an open heart. These are the building blocks of a more compassionate society.
Imagine the ripple effect if we all did that. If each of us committed to one small act of kindness,
Yeah, just once every day.
it could be a chain reaction.
Yeah, a ripple effect of
Mhm.
empathy and understanding just spreading outward from person to person, community to community.
And that's what makes this story so inspiring. It's not just about what Shaq did for Margaret, but about what it sparked in others. It's really a testament to the contagious nature of kindness and the power of human connection.
And, you know, we want to hear from you. What resonated with you most about Shaq and Margaret's story?
Yeah.
What small acts of kindness have you witnessed or participated in?
What are you going to do today?
Exactly. Share your thoughts and experiences
I know.
because this conversation deserves to continue long after this deep dive is over.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive.
I feel like I've gained a new perspective on the power of kindness and the importance of noticing those who are often overlooked.
I'm so glad to hear that, and thanks for joining us for this deep dive into kindness.
Until next time.